like gamification is about being engaged and about being challenged.
Hello, Sales Nation. I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman podcast, and welcome to today's show. On today's show, we have Travis Truett. He's the CEO of Ambition, and we're talking essentially what Ambition does. We're talking about that today, of how we, the individual B2B sales professional, can use gamification to make ourselves more productive in sales. You can find out more about Travis over at ambition.com. Everything that we talk about is available in the show notes over at salesmanpodcast.com. And with all that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hi, Travis, and welcome to the Salesman podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome, sir. So today I want to talk about gamification. That's going to lead on to productivity, and it's going to lead on to a couple of other things as well. I think gamification is a word that has been thrown around, especially on this podcast as well. We've had other people come on to talk about it, and I don't think we really nailed it. So I want to start with that, and then how we can perhaps leverage some of this into our day-to-day sales productivity to make us more productive. And I'm a huge procrastinator, so if there's anything that we can talk about as well to use data to stop us procrastinating, we'll cover that as well. But let's start off at the very top of all this. Travis, do you have a definition, or do you have a way of describing gamification?
Yeah, wow, that's actually a really good first question. When I think of gamification, to me, it's almost the feeling as opposed to some kind of technical matter. Like gamification is about being engaged and about being challenged and about, always kind of having a path to victory. When I look at, typically gamification, I think is overly used to apply to just meaning like a leaderboard or kind of just like a one-off spiff. I've always felt that it's a lot more than that. And so, yeah, I guess my definition would probably just be something that is going to be long-term sustainable, aligns incentives, and again, it's engaging toward a goal.
And let me ask you this then. This is going to sound like a silly question, but there's a lot to the psychology of all of this. Why does having a system, I guess is the best way to describe it, when you're selling, that gives you challenges, that gives you a path to victory, this is clearly sounds ridiculous when I say it, but why is that more motivating than just turning up for work each day, opening your laptop and going, all right, I've got to start from scratch here?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, human beings, we have this, existential need to know, where we are, where we've been, and where we need to go. And so, it's just progress. Like we need progress. And when you look, whether it is gamification or whether it's just having a real-time scorecard, it's just being able to come in and say, I know that if I do this effort, then this effort should translate into this, these results. And I'm going to be able to know that I, left my mark on, this job and this role and this day. And I think that that's just something that, we need to feel good about.
Because this is exactly how my brain works. I've just done a podcast episode with Kendra Lee, and she gave me a really good piece of advice along the lines of the amount of time that you should be prospecting versus the amount of calls you're going to make versus the amount of success you're going to have. And essentially, the end result was you should block your prospecting together into a chunk where you're going to have the probability of at least one successful conversation. So you're not doing what I used to do when I was in medical device sales of 30 minutes here and you get miserable because you don't connect to anyone. You do 45 minutes here and you don't connect with anyone. But then that 1 minute that you spend doing it somewhere else, you do connect with someone, you get excited, but then you're still like net feeling miserable about prospecting. Whereas when you tie it all together in one chunk and you get one great conversation out of it, or whatever the numbers are, it allows you to frame that as a real positive experience. So you want to do it as you move forward. So The effort you put in has got to equal results, and it's got to be measurable, and you've got to be able to see that. And again, it sounds silly me saying this, Travis, but why then? Because we know this. This is intuitive. I don't think we need tons of scientific studies to prove any of this, even though there's so many that exist. Why is it then that the majority of salespeople and the 10 to 20,000 people that will listen to this show over the next few weeks, why is it that the majority of them don't have a process like this and don't have any kind of systems and don't have particularly good metrics? Why, if they know intuitively that it's going to motivate them and going to give them more success, why isn't it like used by every single salesperson on the planet, like verbatim.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think about it all the time. I mean, at the end of the day, one, process is hard. It is, it is scary to kind of define, here's exactly what I need to do and then go do it because, what if it's the wrong thing, or what if I can't reach those goals? And there is something about kind of the measuring stick that is hard. I think a lot of it too is that in today's world, we are so inundated with like information and social media and just communication that I think that we're always putting out fires, and it's really, really hard for anybody, let alone the salesperson, to be able to like take a step back and even take a day just to say, like, how can I be more process driven? How can I be more analytical? How could I better adhere to a system as opposed to, what, I've got all this stuff stacking up, and if I don't get to it, then it's just going, I'm going to end up missing this deal, and I'm going to get behind, and I can't get behind, and I'll worry about this next quarter. And as you were saying earlier, it's just procrastination. And so I think that's one of those things where, just like everybody knows that they need to take their vitamins, everybody knows that they need to exercise and eat healthy. It's just, hard to do it. And so that's where, a lot of the best salespeople, regiment out their daily life. They regiment out their process. They regiment out and measure and analyze, their correlation between effort and results. And typically they become great by not necessarily doing anything special besides just thinking about their time.
Definitely. I think if you split up the top 5% of salespeople, they would all, without a doubt, have this like time blocking in the diary, have very specific process and pathways that they go through, versus I did a little bit of that in medical device sales. I did a lot of just running around, putting out fires. I love that phrase, which is what you used then, which is why I was always ever in the top 20, 30%. I was never in that top 5% on the leaderboards that we had. Which leads me to ask, I'm going to come on to where should we start with all of this? What should be the first thing that we should measure that's going to give us perhaps the best bang for buck to improve on things? But before that, have you got any thoughts on how to get over this procrastination of setting clear goals and then sticking to them? Because again, this is something that I see from the audience who email me. They'll ask me a question, they ask me for my advice on something. So I'll say, well, what are you aiming towards? What's the goal? What's the target with the prospecting or the closing or whatever they're struggling with? And the response is essentially in an email format, but this kind of like, I don't know. That's the response I get. How do we set these goals, and how do we get over this procrastination of just putting all this into practice? Because clearly that's the first step, isn't it?
So there's a couple of ways that I like. One that's more personal to me is whenever I know that I need to do something, I will make it extremely public knowledge to like my friends and family, literally to the point where I know that it is way worse if I don't do it. And so, I'm in I'm in like all these like different group chats, and my friends and I like to give each other hard times, push each other, call each other out. And so, it's funny. I've always done that, whether it's like me taking a trip to some crazy country or, kind of working on a new process or a new sales deck at work. I'm always just like, hey guys, by the way, conference room Friday at 5 p.m. I want to show you guys my new system. And then I literally just block off the calendar, and I know that like I'm going to waste everybody's time, and I am going to get a lot of heckles if I don't produce, if I don't perform, or if I don't go on that trip, or if I don't, do whatever. And so, I think that it's the transparency, it is putting yourself out there, and it is, having, quite frankly, the social pressure. I think that's, at the end of the day, really what drives us is peer pressure, social pressure. One thing that I like that, me and my buddies will sometimes do as well is there's actually, I think, websites now that will actually do this, but you'll basically make a bet with a friend of being like, if I don't do this by this date, then I have to donate like $100 to a cause that I just hate. Like I don't hate anything about this cause, and then vice versa for them. And so, you're looking at the clock, and, you have a reminder on your phone, and it's like, if you don't do this in 3 days, then you have to, donate money, and you're just like, I so strongly believe, like against whatever this is, that like I just have to do it now out of principle. And so again, I've always found that there's no silver bullet, there's no secret sauce. It's just kind of coming up a lot of times with these little things that you can do to kind of just push yourself.
I love this. So I am exactly the same. I only respond to, because I procrastinate so much, I only respond to the pressure of accountability. So what I do now, I've got the best platform to do it because our audience is so engaged, that I will say on the show that I'm doing. So the last one was launching the Sales School, which is our premium training product, essentially, that takes everything that we learn in the interviews and puts them into like a step-by-step course for people. I announced that a date that was going to be launched on the show, and then I got hundreds of people. Literally, there's no way to describe it other than pestering me for early access to it, for kind of insider information to it all. And then on the day that it launched, it actually launched a day late. I did some technical exam. I love diving into all the technical side of things that I know you're like capable of, but I was just screwing it all up. So it took me an extra day to get all the DNS side things and all the nerd stuff sorted. So we launched a day later, and there was so many people just pestering me for it, which is awesome, and I appreciate that, Sales Nation. But that's what made it happen. Otherwise, it would have just been pushed out, and then I would have been, well, we'll do it after Christmas in January. That's a good time to launch a product. So I need this from the audience, and the audience give it to me in spades. What do you say to someone who's listening to this, though, from the sales perspective? They're a B2B sales professional. They're listening to this, and they're going, well, I don't really want the rest of my team or my friends or colleagues or wherever it is to know how well or poorly I'm doing. Is there evidence to show that people who have perhaps their sales targets public and their progress towards sales targets showed publicly towards a team, do they always outperform the people that kind of are shielded from it and only have, if there's either great or awkward conversations once a year when the time is up for them to hit target?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually am blanking on the source right now, so I'll apologize, but I came across a study recently. It might even been from Josh Berzin, who is a Deloitte consultant that does a lot of kind of performance management analytics. I think he was saying that transparent goals, so whenever you set a goal and it is fully transparent within your team, your company, your department, you are 30% more likely to hit that goal if it has like 100%, brutal, awkward, tough, frustrating transparency. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, again, that's one data point. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, like we are social driven creatures, and it's tough. I mean, even for us at Ambition, we dog food our own product, and our product is kind of the foundation of it is transparency and accountability. And, you have days where you get busy on some things that maybe you should be working on, maybe you shouldn't. And then you look at your scorecard or you look at your status and you're just like, I feel like that doesn't represent how much work I actually got done today. And now I feel bad when I shouldn't feel bad. And, there's definitely notions of that. But I think at the end of the day, really, I believe that transparency sets you free. Like it's really easy, but also anxiety ridden to constantly hide from transparency. It's like hiding your homework or hiding your grades from your parents. And it's just like, listen, you can, sweat it out and your parents can be like, where's your report card? And you're like, oh, I don't have it yet. And you're basically tossing and turning for 5 days or a week. Or you can just be like, hey, I got a C because I didn't do my homework, and I'm going to, be yelled at, or you're going to tell me you're disappointed. But then I'm actually going to, the problem's out there, and now I only have, it's only up to me to fix it. And yeah, it's hard to do that, but that's just where you got to get, as a person, as a manager, as a company leader, is just getting things out in the open and basically just really communicating that transparency isn't necessarily, transparency is a double-edged sword for sure, but let's use transparency to better ourselves as opposed to, scold ourselves. And again, that's like a company thing, but it can start with the person.
Well, I think as an individual listening to this now, you're probably in two frames of mind. You're probably really excited to share with your team how well you're doing, where you are, year to date versus your target, if you're targeted year to date, or you are kind of hiding a little bit away. There's probably a little bit of a gut feeling, but anxiety when we talk about stuff like this, if it was going to be like immediately implemented into your company right now and if you're feeling that way, it's probably because you know that you're behind. So I think that in itself is motivating. So I totally agree with all this, Travis. And what I want to move on to now is how we can implement some of this really practically day to day for the audience, and myself included, if there's anything I can pick up from this. And I want to start by asking you to frame the rest of the conversation, essentially, which is more important or which has the best results? Focusing in on the end goal. So being transparent, having set targets, having accountability for, I've got to close $1 million worth of business at the end of the year, or going the other way around and focusing on the process of I've got to make so many calls a day or I've got to do this, day to day, that if you do all that will lead to the goal. So which is more important, the goal or the process?
Yeah. So, number one is definitely the process. So really what it comes down to is number one is your short-term activities. Like what is your effort? Number two, I would say, is your productivity. So what is your effort and how does it translate into results? And then number three are results. And so, there's all these, I wish I knew them better off the top of my head, but there's all these like famous quotes from like CEOs and coaches that are, whether it is, you don't win, if your goal is to win a Super Bowl, like you don't just tell your team, hey guys, like no matter what, we have to win the Super Bowl. It's just like, hey, we are going to do 3-a-days and we're going to practice really hard and we are going to scheme really well and we are going to study tape and we are going to eat really healthy. Like that's how you win a Super Bowl. And so it's the same thing with sales or, really anything in life is like, what am I doing every day to, what is my effort level? And so again, kind of bring this a little bit back to what we do at Ambition is, you basically you organize employees into roles. So, SDR, AE, senior AE, whatever it is. And you're just like, okay, an SDR, here is what, if they do these things every single day, then it should translate into these results based on, ideally being able to look at your top performers or your historical data. And then what you're able to do is say, okay, every day I'm supposed to do these 5 things, and these 5 things are supposed to lead to 2 monthly results. And then you have kind of like a correlation between the two, and then it's your productivity. And then, kind of what that unlocks is you're able to have different conversations around, again, like whether it's you inflective looking at yourself or whether you're a manager, is basically saying, okay, I'm working really, really hard, but I'm actually not trending toward any of my results. Okay, that's in essence maybe a yellow flag. Like they've got all the effort there, but they need to be trained, or they're just not, they're not doing that well on the phone, or they're not closing deals. They're either, maybe they're working hard and getting the results they want. Perfect, great. Maybe they are not working very hard and they are getting a lot of results. So maybe that means that you're not necessarily measuring maybe they are working hard and you're just not measuring it. Or maybe they're just working really big accounts and, they've got their quota and they're just playing golf. Maybe that way you can kind of activate them with some kind of like targeted gamification. Or maybe somebody's just putting in low effort and, of course, getting low result. And then that's just the conversation of saying, is this the right fit for you? And so, again, kind of back to your original question, like, we definitely break it down into you have to start with the process, then look at the correlation, and then really, just as your benchmark is, to kind of look at the end result.
And to put this into context for the audience, regular listeners will know that I still sell all the ad space on the podcast, so I can still test all these assumptions that we have and talk about on the show. And the last, the last experiment I did was video email sales letter kind of things. But the one I did before that was an experiment between spending a week narrowing down and trying loads of different techniques and focusing on the messaging and seeing how many deals I closed from that. And I think I closed two sponsorship deals of like a quarter each. Then the next week, I just emailed 3 people a day from the sales enablement industry. And I closed about 6 months full every space that we had just from sending very simple emails and getting people on the phone. It was literally no more complicated than that. So I'm super excited that you the way you described all this of short-term action versus productivity versus results. Because for me, if we sell out the sponsorship way too easily, so I need something else to sell as a case study for the show moving forward. But yep. The experiment essentially told me that I just need to send a couple of emails every morning and not even worry about the results because they'll just happen. And that to a salesperson is crazy when they're spending all this time procrastinating and going back and forth and trying all these different things and doing this when perhaps the results that they want could just come from very simple actions repeated regularly over the longer term. Which leads me to ask you, Travis, is it possible right now in sales, in the world that we live in the internet age, is it possible to have success in sales by selling smarter, or do we all need to put in effort as well? Is success effort plus selling smart? Or is it, and this is clearly a loaded question, but is it possible to sell and be successful and have everything you want by just being, the smartest person in the room?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, I think at least for the foreseeable future, effort is number one. With that said, I, definitely think that the best salespeople are, it kind of goes with what I was saying earlier, people that high effort, that constrain their effort into a process, and then obviously are analytical about that process and saying what in this process is working and what is not. And so, I definitely think, and we've seen it here, I've seen it with myself. It is easy with all the tools today, all the analytical tools, the sales acceleration tools, to, A/B test email templates and to, look at the perfect minute of the day to send, emails or make phone calls. And it's like all that stuff. And I think that those are all valuable, but it's also kind of easy to get lost in the weeds there. And so, yeah, I mean, again, what we do internally and what's worked for us and what we kind of, help coach our customers on is just, instill the baseline effort, make sure that effort is being guided towards something, because, somebody that's making 150 phone calls a day, one, probably isn't having very much fun. And two, if that's not going toward anything, then they're going to burn out really, really quickly. So, how's that effort being guided, within a process? And then, being able to take a step back every week, every month, every quarter, and basically just saying, okay, what can we look at? If there was one thing that we were going to change or to test, what would it be? And I think that's kind of where the selling smarter comes in. There's, with that said, one of our best salespeople at Ambition, his background is literally in neuroscience, and, he is an extremely productive seller in that he typically puts in, a little bit less effort for a little bit more result. But, as far as a baseline goes, like, you're still coming in and you're still, working hard every day to make things happen.
Good stuff. I'm glad you said that, because I think effort is really the needle mover in a lot of this stuff before you can bring in tools and get more complicated. And for the individual, I think the effort, very simply, double the effort from a lot of the people listening is probably going to lead to near double results. And from that, I want to get, again, real practical, so that anyone who's listening to this now, driving on their way to work or driving to a sales meeting, they can, when they pull over, when they get to the car park, when they get off the train, they can put this into action, at least at a small scale. What is the, 1, 2, 3, or the biggest bang for buck analytic that we should be looking for from a process perspective? Is it like number of prospecting reach outs a day? What's the first thing that we should track to have the biggest change here?
Yeah. So, I think that, at the end of the day, it isn't necessarily a one size fits all in terms of like the exact formula. It can vary by role, by industry, by tenure. But, really what I would say is, even if it starts, just pull up a spreadsheet and just say, okay, what do I do every day? I make phone calls, I make emails, I'm supposed to maybe set appointments or conduct demos. Well, those are my daily activities. And so, every day, how many of each do I want to complete? And then maybe like weight those. So literally imagine a spreadsheet, and then imagine you have an activities column, and you're basically just saying, these are my daily activities. These are the benchmarks that I want to hit per activity. And then these are, I'm going to weight, completed demo to be worth more than a phone call. And now I kind of have like a super score. Basically, like, here's like my daily activity score. And then on let's say a monthly basis, you do the same thing. I know that I need to do $10,000 in new revenue. I need to do $50,000 in new pipeline, and I need to close 2 deals. Okay, well, again, same thing. You have your metrics, you have your benchmarks, and then you have your weights. And then basically what ends up happening is, and here's kind of where the weights play in, is that you're able to kind of like, again, create these super scores. And then all of a sudden with these super scores, you're able to actually look at your correlation, your productivity, so that imagine, at the end of the month, you're looking at what you've done and you say, okay, I'm going to average my daily super score, and my average daily super score is a 33. Like, let's say a 33 out of 100, and your monthly score is a 30. Well, then you can say to yourself, okay, this makes sense. Like, I got 30% of my objectives done because I put in, again, what I kind of set for myself, 30% of the activities I needed to do every day. Or maybe you do 70 and 70, or maybe you do 120 score of effort and 80% of objective. Anyway, that's kind of, I think that you can start with a spreadsheet, and just by, again, thinking through activities, objectives, and then correlation, you can actually get a lot of bang for your buck there. And I think it's simple. It's something that anybody can do. And then, like, quite frankly, at Ambition, we've literally codified that exact process into, an aspect of our product, so that, from a company level, we're able to kind of build that for everybody, and then, tie in data, and it's all real time.
Let me just go back over this, because I think people can literally implement this now. And of course, Ambition is a product that solves this pain on the kind of bigger corporate level, perhaps. But for the individual, I think you just absolutely nailed it. Jump in here if I'm go wrong with any of this.
Yeah.
So you start with your end goal in mind, whether that be X number of deals or like a finite amount of cash. You then go back that step further and work out, well, I need to close so many deals to achieve this. I need to make so many calls to achieve that. And then you give yourself a score for each of these calls, and then you just got a number to hit each day, which is more exciting than, because it's been scored, it's more exciting than I've got to make 10 phone calls. You could have, if you're weighted on meetings that are set and deals closed versus just phone calls, it gives you a bit more flexibility as well, of saying, well, I feel like going all in today, so I'm going to do X, Y, Z. That's going to give me more points, and as long as at the end of the month it all adds up, then it makes total sense. Because of course, everyone has good days and bad days. Some people are super motivated on some days, and some people are, just want a quieter Friday afternoon. And if you're willing and able to put in perhaps more effort on that Thursday to buy yourself with these points a quieter Friday afternoon, I think that would work and give people that bit of flexibility that perhaps they've been after, versus the corporate side of things. And the stereotypical sales managers goes, make 25 cold calls every day. If you don't, you're sacked, which clearly isn't motivating in itself, is it?
Yeah, no. And again, that's exactly it. Like, you have the flexibility, you have more control. And, when you have it, so there's two kind of caveats that we've learned along the way is, one is that the nice thing about the weightings is that, a phone call is worth 1 point, ends up becoming 1 point, but, a demo is worth 20. And that way, if you have a day where you've just stacked up demos and you kind of give yourself a score of 120 for that day, but you only made 4 phone calls, it's like, well, I still have a really good score, because I was, again, so again, it kind of can wash that way. Whereas if you don't have any demos, you're just like, okay, I know I need to make up for this with phone calls. And then another thing too is when you think through it, again, is, simplicity, is one of the biggest factors in you being able to kind of adhere to this, having a mental model for it, being able to adhere to it, being able to like tell other people about it. And so what we've tried to do is, everybody kind of ingrained into them from the school system kind of inherently knows like the 0 to 100 scale. Like, that 100 is good, that 90 is an A, 80 is a B. Like, it's just like it's just a part of us. And so we tried to make our system, both within, both internally for us and within the product, adhere to that scale. And so that way it's just like, okay, my grade for today is a B minus, but my grade for the month, just went from a C plus to a B plus. And so again, it's just all about making it intuitive, making it simple. It's better than, just being able to be like, okay, well, my score, my points or whatever is, 19,000, and again, it's just making it, it's all about fitting it into that mental model. And so you can just say, you can wake up in the morning and just say, I know exactly what I need to do. I know exactly how I'm going to be able to determine whether I had a good day or a bad day. And then I'm going to be able to ideally tell people about it, and it'll make sense to them.
Yeah, I would love this just on a scale that I could use with the podcast, even of you get a podcast episode out every day. If you record a show, it seems like this is the format for just productivity in general, not even sales, which is exciting. And with that, Travis, I've got a couple of questions, mate, that I ask everyone that comes on the show. So we'll run through these, and then you can tell us a little bit more about Ambition itself. First one, which do you prefer? And I for our conversation that we had before we click record, I'm pretty confident I know the answer of this, but which do you prefer, startups or baseball?
Startups.
The baseball came from, I was on your Twitter profile, and there was a couple of pictures on there from that. Yeah. Next one, mate. Dollar size, if possible. What's the biggest deal that you've ever closed?
Biggest deal. I've closed a $250,000 deal before. That's the biggest I've been able to amass.
Nice, good number. Next one. What is one book or resource that you'd recommend to the Salesman podcast audience?
I was actually asked this the other day, and I have maybe not a contrarian, but a different aspect on this. Um, I I really like Hardcore History, which is a podcast series by Dan Carlin, and then I'm a big fan of reading military nonfiction. Not only because it is history, and it's kind of good to know where we've been and some of the sacrifices people have made, but it has an amazing effect of regardless of how terrible of a day I've had, it helps give me the perspective that I live a very comfortable, amazing life, and it kind of immediately puts me in a happier place, which I think every hard-nosed, hard-going salesperson or entrepreneur can appreciate every day.
Definitely. Near me in Leeds, there's an armories run by the government, and I think there's one in London, in Leeds, and one in Scotland as well. And it runs through essentially from bow and arrows to swords and spears to there's a huge elephant, which different cultures would, and I don't know how true this is. I assume it's relatively true. I don't know how often it's used, but it would be ridden into battle. Then they go on to like kind of knights on horseback into Henry VIII. Into more, machine guns that are on the front of helicopters, into modern rifles and weaponry. And I go there every few months or so, and I have exactly the same experience as you just described. Of at first, I'm like, this is so interesting. I love guns, and clearly in the UK we don't have access to guns and firing them and stuff, so it's still like a massive novelty to us. And I'll go around, and then by the end of it, by the time I get to all the modern equipment, when it's saying the AK-47, there's so many, like millions of them out there, they've killed so many million people, the number of the amount of ammunition that's produced for it is like incredible. It's really crazy and humbling to me. So I'll go there maybe it's like once a quarter, every 2 months or so, just for a wander around. And as I said, I'm dead excited about all these like boy toys essentially, and at the end of it, it's a really weird, humbling experience for me. So I appreciate with the nonfiction and the hardcore history podcast there as well. And with that, Travis, final question for you, mate. If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at selling?
Honestly, I would have gone back. I self-taught I basically learned how to program on my own about 4 years ago. And it was just this epiphany of like, even if you don't become like a Google computer scientist, just being able to be quick and dirty with websites, or being able to like implement tools, or be able to, more effectively, work with like a HubSpot or anything like that. It just opens up a whole new world to you, where kind of going back to what you were saying, where you can work a lot smarter, you can kind of benefit that effort. So yeah, I'd probably just go back to like high school or college and be like, honestly, like don't even get a business degree, like learn a hard skill like this, and just leverage, effort and relationships to do the rest.
Well, I'll tell you this, and you'll laugh being a coder and understanding it. In high school, I remember there was a lad called Matthew Potter, I think his name was. He will never listen to this show, but he told me and showed me the basics of, quote unquote programming, because clearly it's the most basic form of it whatsoever, but of formatting HTML. And the first page I made was this disgusting skateboarding website. It had iframes at the top, down the side as a navigation bar, and iframe at the bottom. Clearly, it wouldn't be even serviceable in a modern browser, I don't think. But I look back at then and think, did I need to go to university? Did I need to even go to college? Could I have just jumped into... I probably would have always been on the business front, the sales front end of things, as opposed to being on the back end as a programmer. But yeah, it's totally... It's definitely worth thinking about and bearing in mind for when I have kids and stuff, of whether all that extra academia is needed when you can just, as you said, get down and dirty and have real results real quickly. And I think that's that's what I took away from your answer there.
No, definitely. I mean, no, I think about that all the time. And my brother's 6 years younger than me. When he was in college, I begged him, just literally nagged him like every day to like take more programming classes, learn how to program. And he finally did it, and my nagging paid off. And now he's graduated. He basically is the sales guy / engineer that's selling big projects, building them, supporting them. Like he's building a nice little core business, and he always tells me it's one of the best decisions he's made. And And yeah, I always try and pay it forward to my other friends as well, as just saying, listen, it's hard. It's like learning Spanish or French, or, like you have to dedicate a lot of time to it. But, we obviously very clearly live in a digital age, and, wouldn't you want to speak the language of the age we're in? And yeah, so.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think programming, and I think an individual, and it may not be called sales, it might be, customer success, it might have another name in the next 4 or 5 years with the changes that happen, but essentially it's sales, it's communication. I think those two things are within our, the foreseeable future of our careers, are very unlikely to be engineered away. They might be shipped off to other parts of the world, but that face-to-face communication, whether it be on Skype, whether it be in person, I think that's super valuable. And so that's a skill set that I really encourage the audience to pay more attention to and get good at, because it will just pay dividends in the future. And with that, Travis, tell us a little bit about Ambition. We've touched on it throughout the show, but tell us a little bit about it and where we can find out more about you and the product as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ambition, you can find us at ambition.com. We're an employee productivity platform. So a lot of what I talked about on the show, we do scorecarding. So basically what I was talking about with being able to break down activities and objectives by role and look at productivity, that's a big aspect of what we do. We have elements of gamification. We have a goal management system. We're actually working on some training and coaching apps kind of right now. Yeah, basically we can work with any and all data sources. All of our, employees will basically be able to log in, kind of see full transparency, accountability around what they're doing every day and how to become better. And then we have a lot of stuff that makes it, drives engagement and motivation and recognition. So we started about 3 years ago, me and 2 buddies, and we've been able to grow it into a recently profitable company, which is pretty exciting. And so, we're just kind of, going from there.
Congratulations. That's a huge kind of milestone, I guess, because you're venture backed, aren't you?
Yeah, venture backed, and, just kind of, focus on our growth numbers, focus on our efforts, focused on the product, and things have been working really well for us. And I think we're, you could probably accuse me of drinking the Kool-Aid, but I think we're on something big, and it's it's starting to hit a really exciting point.
Congratulations. Well, with that, Travis, I want to thank you for your time and your insights, mate. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman podcast.
Yep. Appreciate you having me.